Hello and welcome to this Affinity photo and design tutorial where I'm going to try and make this sort of 3D isometric map image. I came across this tutorial by Invato Toots. It is for Photoshop, and then in this they make an action which is a bit like Affinity's macros. Now I'm not going to try and make a macro, it's sort of way beyond my abilities. I'll just show you how I sort of would recreate this image. Now in my efforts to try and recreate this, I got into all sorts of problems, and one of the members of Fans of Serif Software, which I run, Michael, I'm sorry I'm not going to try and pronounce your surname here, but he posted a video showing how he would do it on the iPad version of Affinity Designer. So this is how I worked out how to do this on the PC, but you should be able to do this on the Mac or even on the iPad. Now I have made a written tutorial which can be downloaded from the file section of this group, somewhere down here. And I will also add a link to somewhere else where it can be downloaded from in the description for this video. So let's just get on with the tutorial. Now I'm going to start, I've made a new document, and I'm going to start with a fairly big one. I've made it A3, which is 420mm by 297mm, and it's going to be landscape, as you can see here, because we want it to be sort of wider rather than taller. You could make this any size you want really, but I find it the bigger the better, and it's easier to work out the maths in my opinion. It also might help if you have the rulers which run along the top and side of the screen, and you can get this by going to the view menu and show rulers, or you can do Control R, or I think it is Command R on a Mac. So now, in my opinion, it's probably better to make the image that you want to go into this beforehand. I'm not going to do it that way at this point, but for me, I think that would be easier. But whatever you're going to do, whether you make the image first or you do it now, you want to be able to divide that into 3 sections. So I'm going to make mine 300 wide, because I've got the width for this is 420, so I want 300 wide, so I can have 3 sections of 100mm each. So let's just make that document first of all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the shapes, and I'm going to come to rectangle tool, which is in the menu that is down here, or you can just click U on the keyboard. And I'm just going to draw out any old size for the moment, and then yours by default might be on navigation tab down here, but if you come to transform, you have the size here, and so I'm going to type in the size that I want. So I want this to be 300, and I'm going to make it a lot easier to remember. I'm going to make it 200 high. Let me just move this into the center a bit here. There we go. So now I want the image that I want to go into this. It could be any image you want, but I'm going to use this world map which I got from Pixabay, and I will add links to this in the description for this video as well. So I'm just going to right click on the layer, copy, come back to my image wherever it is. What did I do with it? Oh, it's over here. Right, sorry. Right, so and then I'm going to come to edit menu and paste. Now this is obviously far too big for this image at the moment, so I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, come to one of the corners, hold down the control key so it stays in proportion, get it near enough where I want it to go, size wise and positional wise, and that's not too bad, but at the moment it's not really part of that rectangle. What I need to do is to click on the icon for this layer and drag it down until there's a blue line that comes across and only comes up to the edge of the icon here, and then when I let go of the mouse button, that will drop that into and make it part of the rectangle. I mean, I can still resize this because that layer is still highlighted, but I think it's okay where it is, so I'm happy with that where that is. The only thing I'm not too happy about is like the background. Now I personally want a textured background, so I'm going to go for this texture. Now I can't remember where I got this from, so I can't give you links to this, but I'm sure you can find your own textures. So I'll just right click that, copy, come back to my image here, and I'm going to highlight the map layer so it should paste this in above that, and it will still be part of that group. So edit, paste, move tool, and then just position it as I want. And what I will do is then just drag it down below the map, so the map is now sitting on top. Let me press Ctrl and 0 to zoom out. So we now have all the elements that I need for my 3D map. And I personally, if you're doing this in Designer, you'd sort of have to leave it like this, because if I remember rightly, you can't merge visible in Designer like you can in Photo. I personally prefer to merge visible in this particular case, so I'll right click this, merge visible, and then I can hide that layer that I set it up with, and then I'm working on just a single image layer. So once we have this done, we now need to divide this into 3 sections, and like I said, because I've made it 300 by 200, I want sections of 100 by 200. So I'll again come to the rectangle tool, and I don't have to be on this at the moment, to be exact. I'll just sort of get it roughly, and then again from the transform tool tab, I'm going to make it 100 wide and 200 high. Come back to the move tool, and then I can just slot that into position. And if you have snapping on, it does make it easier because it will sort of snap it into position. So once I have that first one, I just need to duplicate this 2 more times. So you can either right click on the layer and come to duplicate, or you can just press Ctrl and J or Command and J. So you have 3 versions of this. So again, I'm on the move tool, and I'm going to move that one right over to the right, and then move this one into the middle. Now this middle one at the moment is the same color as all the others, but I'm going to change this middle one to black. I'll explain why later. So I'll just click on that, bring that down, make it black. And what I will also do is, just for sort of help out a little bit, I'm going to rename these panels. So I'm going to make this one left, this one middle, and this one right. You don't have to rename them, it just makes it slightly easier. So we have our 3 panels, and what we need now is 3 versions of either your merged image or your group if you're doing this in Designer. So again, I'll just right click this, duplicate that 2 times, and then I'm going to drop one of these in each of these panels, making it a child of that particular panel. So again, you're looking for the blue line that comes across but not all the way across. So I'll do this top one first and drop it into the right panel, and then do the next one and drop that into the middle panel, and the last one and drop that into the left panel. Now I don't know if you can see this, but there's a slight line there, so this may not be absolutely touching 100%, but at the moment that's not that much of a problem, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this right group. I'm on the mouse move tool, and I'm just going to click and move this out of the way. You can even go right off screen if necessary, and then move the middle one, and we're going to work on this left one first of all. So I'm going to start off by moving it down a bit lower and to the left here, and what we're going to do is we're going to sort of slant it or shear it, and to do that what you need to do is bring your cursor, because at the top here you've got the node where you can rotate. If you bring the cursor to the top of that, the cursor will change to a curved double-ended arrow. But if you bring it down a little bit further, at some point that cursor will change to 2 arrows, one going left, one going right. And if you then, once you've got that cursor, you can click, and if you move left or right, you can shear or slant in whatever direction you want. So I'm going to go to the left with that one. So then I'm going to highlight the middle panel, and now bring this in, and I'm going to get this bottom area down here to be touching. So I'm just going to zoom in and get that touching, and zoom out again, and again I'm going to come up here to get that double arrow icon and shift this over to the left, and it's just a case of getting that to line up. So now what we want to do is to sort of lift this side, and to do that you've got to bring the cursor down to this middle icon here, and if you come just slightly off of that, you can see you get that double-ended icon effect again, but this time it points up and down. So if you click and hold and then lift, it will lift that. I mean, you could go down, but I mean, if you lift this up to whatever angle you want it to be, like that, I'm happy with that. So then it's a case of clicking on the right one, bringing that in, again getting the bottom corners to touch. I think that is touching. It looks okay. I'll zoom out again. Again, come up here and shear this over, so you now have that touching there. And you could, if you want, shear this down a little bit or up a little bit, but I'm going to leave it as it is. If I come off of the move tool, hopefully, so I do still have that little line coming across the black area there. Maybe I just need to nudge that over slightly. Let's try that. Yes, it's still there a little bit, but I'll leave it like that. So what I will now do is, with this top layer that is highlighted, I'll hold down the shift key and I'll click on the left panel, and that will highlight all of those, and then I will right click and group them together. So they are now all grouped, and now if I move, I can move it wherever I want. So I'm going to put it roughly, well, I'll put it in the center. So that is basically the image, but to make this more interesting, we're going to want a bit of shadow to help give the effect of it being 3D. Now what I will do here is I'll open up this group, and this middle panel, what I'll do is I'll highlight that. I'm going to right click, duplicate that, and I'm going to click and move this group to the very top until it's outside of that group, it's no longer part of that group. I will open up the group and I will turn off the image, and this is where we got the black panel that I made earlier, and I've done this to help give a bit of shading, and to get that effect I'm going to change the blend mode from normal. There are various blend modes that you could try, but I've found that average gives about the best one, and then just drop the opacity down a bit. I mean somewhere around the 65-70% mark. Yeah, so I'm sort of quite happy with that. It gives you that sort of extra shading effect that helps sell that this is like a 3D image. Now the next thing that helps sell that this is a 3D image is shadow underneath this. So let me just shut that group, and I will highlight the actual map group. In fact, what I'll do is I'll rename that map, so you know that this is the map group, and I can shut that because I don't need to see the layers within the group, because I'm going to add the effect to the whole group. Now to add effects, there are two ways of doing this. You can click on the FX button that's down here, which will open up this sort of floating panel where you can move wherever you want, and there is also a tab here which is called Effects. Now if you select, which I'm going to do, I'm going to select outer shadow. I'm going to put a tick in it here. You will see that it will also automatically put a tick in the box over there. So as you can see, they are working in unison. Now if I click on the name outer shadow, you get the options, and if I drop down the options here, you can see there are some options in here, but they're not quite the same as what we have here, because one, in this effect you don't get the blend mode. You do get, both got the color, and they both got opacity, radius and offset, but this one here doesn't have intensity, but this one here has the offset tool, which is something we need, and it's not part of this. So it really does help to have both of these open in this particular case. Why all the options aren't available in both versions, I really don't understand. It's not like there isn't enough room on here to put an offset tool button, but that is a different problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise all of these up to 100% to start off with, so I can see where the shadow is going to be. And now you just need to work out what direction you want the shadow to come from. So as soon as I've put the shadow on this middle panel, so it looked like the light is coming from this direction, so the shadow underneath will need to be sort of under and to the left. So I'm going to change the direction. At the moment it's on 315 going that way. I'm going to move it, just click over here, so we're on 225, but we're going to be altering that in a minute anyway. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the intensity down quite a way, just to about, let's try about 10%, just to give that more hazy, shadowy effect. Now the offset, that is sort of how far that is away from the map. So as it stands at the moment, you're sort of stuck on 100%. I suppose you could click and type in a different amount, but you are sort of constrained by up to 100 pixels. Radius, again, it's how sharp or hazy that is. So I'm going to leave that on 100%. So let me drop this down out of the way. In fact, I could shut that now. And we will use the offset tool, which is this button here. And when you click on this button here, as you see, the cursor now has two little squares behind it. And if you just sort of click anywhere on the image here, you can click and hold. You can move this shadow anywhere you like. Further away, the more than you could do with just the slider option. And it's easier because you can visually see it and decide how much of a shadow and how much of the effect you want it to look like it's coming off of the background. So I'm quite happy where that is. So that now it's on, the angle's 237 and the offset is now 313.7. But if you had to sort of sit in and type that, and you'd have to keep guessing at numbers to try and find out where you want it to go. So this offset tool is very handy in that respect, but it is only available from the effects tab. So I'm going to go back to layers and I'll come to the move tool, and because that shadow now comes down a bit lower, I'm going to just move this. Let me include, I'll hold down the control key and include that shadow as well when I move. So I'll just move them all up, just so that shadow is not so close to the bottom. Right, so really the last thing we need now is a sort of a better background. And you can pick a background that suits your particular image. And where is it? I've got it's not that one. Oh, it's that one here. Yeah, I downloaded a load of free vintage maps quite a while ago. I think it came from Design Bundles, but I'm not 100% certain. So I can't give you a link to that because I don't think it's free anymore. But anyway, you can find your own textures that suit your particular image. So I'll just copy that and highlight that bottom layer, and then edit and paste that in. Come to the move tool and I'll just stretch that over, and basically that would be the end of the tutorial. You could intensify the shadow maybe if it's not showing up so well on the background, but I'm going to leave mine as it is, I think, and I will now save this, export it under a new name. And just to show you some other ones that I did, that was one of the early effects I did. This one I did in Designer, and this time I made the folds go in the opposite direction, so the shadow was now on the right rather than the left. And this one I did was an attempt at trying to do a quad version of that. So rather than dividing it into 3 sections, I made sections, 4 sections, and then obviously it had 4 different groups, and you have to move them separately. So that is the end of the tutorial. Again, like I said, there is a written version of this, and that can be downloaded. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.